Alright, what's up everybody? Hope you're all doing well. We're back, and today we're continuing our hypercar theme. I always call them hypercars. That's where I kind of define hypercar, like hybrid, supercar, hypercar. So, we're continuing with the Porsche 918 Spider, and what a Porsche this one is. I actually like this one. You know, I'm not big on Porsches in general. I kind of think that they've been making the same car forever, which, you know, they kind of have, they kind of haven't. I mean, it's the same car, just with different trim levels and engine options, basically, but it's all roughly the same body with maybe some subtle cues like wings and stuff for the GT3 and GT2 RS and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same car, and I don't like it. I digress. We are talking about the Spider, which Porsche 918 Spider. The 918 comes from only 918 models being made, so that makes sense. Spider, it has a retractable roof, but it's a hard top, so that's usually where Spider comes into play. I want to say some cars, when the term Spider first came out, it was used for some soft tops, but now it's pretty much primarily a hard top thing. So, that's where that comes from, and it's a Porsche, so we'll call it a Porsche. Some facts about the beast, I'll call it, is 880 horsepower with 940 torque. Now, that is a little bit different than the LaFerrari. So, the LaFerrari came in at just below 1,000 horsepower, but only 660 torque. Now, the reason for that is the LaFerrari only had one kind of hybrid piece of technology on it, and that was its curve system, and that would just help it, that basically just gave it a horsepower boost, but nothing too crazy. However, the Porsche has two main motors, electric hybrid motors, and it's also a plug-in, so there's that, and those help create a huge amount of torque because they're actually helping to drive the wheels. In the LaFerrari, they aren't driving the wheels as hard as on the Porsche, especially having one motor for the front and one for the back. So to the rear wheels, it's almost an all-wheel drive. It is basically an all-wheel drive car in the sense that to the rear wheels, the engine at 600 horsepower and then a 100 plus horsepower motor, electric motor, is being sent to the rear wheels, while one motor is dedicated to the front. So you're still getting a severe amount of power to the rear and just a little helping hand to the front. Although my favorite thing about this car is that it looks different, and it looks, of course, like a supercar, hypercar kind of thing where it's kind of flattish. It's not that much smaller than a regular Porsche 911 of the same year. It's 4 or 5 inches shorter, which I guess, I don't know, that's if it is actually, sorry, my bad, it is 6 inches shorter, and that's about half a foot, so that is actually quite a lot now. I mean, I guess if you think about it, but you're not necessarily losing that much headroom because your seat is more, you're sitting in the tub, as they call it, where you're really down low to the ground. It's like 1 inch less wide and 2 or 3 inches shorter, so like less length. So it's not that small overall, just a lot shorter, but they did do a much better design to the body. They didn't just take a 911 and give it all these things, a 4.3 liter V8 naturally aspirated plus the hybrid motors. So I like that they went with a whole new body because Porsche is known for doing the same body. It has more of, most of the body is fairly flat. It does have body lines, and then it's more of a bubble on top for the cockpit, which is very reminiscent of this style of car. The LaFerrari is like that. McLaren, not so much, but McLarens have always been that super smooth, elegant shape, so that's that. My favorite thing about this car are the brakes. Now, that might seem silly, but on the LaFerrari, you just get Brembo brakes, Brembo carbon ceramics. Now, I say just, that's still like kind of considered the best brake and brake caliper setup you can have. Like little slotted carbon ceramics are as good as it pretty much gets. But the Porsche gets electromagnetic brakes. Now, that means that it's actually, when it's braking, it's using electromagnetic fields to slow down the disc, which is crazy. It is absolutely ridiculous, and I love that they did it. And I should have done a bit more research into that. Maybe I will on a dedicated video. But I've never heard of it being used except for on this car. I bet some prototype cars have it. I bet some one-offs have it, but nothing that has ever come close to a production vehicle has really had stuff like that. And I really like that because it is a German car. They're known for being very technologically savvy, very precise, and I think that just kind of helps propel that idea of German vehicles. While the Lamborghini it's bright red, it's loud, it's got a V12, it's an Italian car. It is a Ferrari, but it's pretty crazy, it's flamboyant. And the Porsche is not as hard. Not that the Ferrari is hard to look at, but I do think it looks a bit better than the LaFerrari. It's a very nice styled vehicle. Just like the LaFerrari, I didn't mention this in the last video, 7-speed dual clutch. I imagine the McLaren will have a 7-speed dual clutch, but we'll get on that tomorrow. And after reviewing a lot of these cars and a lot of these high-end cars, to me it appears that 7-speed dual clutches are basically as good as it gets. I mean, I know a dual clutch is as good as it gets, but they always stop at 7 gears, and I am curious as to why about that. Why don't they do an 8 or 9 gear or 10 gear like there are for other transmissions or conventional transmissions? I want to know why 7 gear is the preferred stopping point for dual clutches. So that would be an interesting thing to look at, and maybe I will later make a video about the dual clutches and things like that. But back to the Porsche, its top speed is its 0 to 60 is very debatable. Basically, from the factory, Porsche said it could do it in 2.7 seconds, but on street tests, people were finding that it could do it for Porsche, that was 0 to 100 kilometers, so 62 miles per hour. They said it could do it in 6.7. So I imagine if it was 0 to 60, that's only 2 miles difference. That'd probably be maybe a tenth of a second, so it could be 2.6. But people are finding that I could do it in like 2.4 and 2.3 0 to 60, which is, I mean, any time that's shaved off of a number that's that small is a lot. So if you're able to take tenths and tenths and tenths off a second, so that is always nice when a factory car says it has a standard time, and it's always lower. That's a very good thing. You never want to get it like you never want to get a car that says it can do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, but it really takes 5. You probably physically won't notice unless you do drive these cars a lot, but it still is, they're lying to you basically. Like, a lot of these numbers are always like, they take the car to the very best, and this is technically what is achievable under the perfect conditions under this car to get that time. So it is nice when maybe they didn't have the perfect conditions and just your regular daily driving conditions are good enough to achieve times of that fast. It did break a bunch of world records. It did break a bunch of records, as like it beat when it released, and back in 2013, 2015, it did Motor Trend's figure 8 in 22 seconds, which was the fastest vehicle of the time. So all around, a very good car. Just about as fast as the LaFerrari, 214 miles per hour, while the Ferrari was 217 top mile per hour. And it weighs 3,500 pounds. Now, I talked about my issue with the weight in the LaFerrari, saying that I thought that was too heavy. For the Ferrari, it said 3,500 just regular curb weight, and then when dry, 27. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. But with the Porsche, it's 3,500, and having 2 hybrid motors and it being a plug-in, so you actually have a big power cell and stuff, that makes a lot of sense. Now, even though it is a plug-in hybrid, it only has a range of being on full electricity for 12 miles. That's abysmal. That is the worst I have ever heard of a hybrid ever doing. Now, this is a very different car, but 12 miles on electricity only, that is ridiculous. But hybrid plus gasoline together, it has a range of 400 miles on a full tank. Now, that's really good for a supercar. That's incredible. But 12? And it takes 7 hours to charge at your home. So if you empty it and you plug it in at night, make sure to plug it in all night. So it's actually ready to go. Don't plug it in at like 1 o'clock and be ready to leave at, I don't know, 6 or 7 in the morning and try and do your 12-mile drive on a full charge. It won't happen. So that's all today. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow with McLaren.